I'm Denise Camille, Urban Love Therapist. Come to the barbershops every Saturday, have different discussions and dialogue. So before we get into today's topic, anybody who has a question that they want to get asked, it's your free session right now. Go ahead and ask it. Self-awareness coach, what y'all got?
Is this a direct question for you or just in general?
In general. That's a general question.
I got one.
Oh, okay. I was waiting because he thought he had a question, but he didn't have a question.
How do you know when you're grown?
How do you know when you're grown? Okay, so are we defining maturity or are we defining experience?
How you want to answer that? Okay, we do 4 parts, but let's do the maturity part.
The maturity. How do you know when you're mature?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's better. I like that.
okay, so how do you know when you're mature? When you're not willing to tolerate the things of your childhood that made you move in certain ways. When you realize your experiences don't excite you anymore.
Right.
When you realize that the things that you did in the past, I was like, oh, let's just be kiddie, whatever like that. Yeah. You don't want to do that anymore because it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's how you know you're mature. And what was the other part to that? How do you know? Did that answer your question, man?
You said you're mature. You said grown. I said grown.
Grown.
Yeah.
So how do you know when you're grown? So you know when you're grown when you're not, when your time is just as valuable as your money.
Okay.
That's how you know when you're grown, right? When your time is just as valuable as your money.
You're not being more responsible.
You can be responsible but not be grown. You got a lot of mothers who are responsible but not mothers.
Yeah. You got a lot of kids too that's responsible.
That are not grown, right. So their essence is truly their time is of value.
So you can't be grown as a kid? Like if you get emancipated and you kind of just have,
No, you chose to be emancipated because you just didn't want to be in that environment.
That's a choice.
Right.
That's a choice.
That's not being grown.
Well,
That's removing yourself from a toxic environment. That's a smart choice.
but you're not being grown?
What you saying?
No.
I'm saying in a situation like if you was a man, like
It's like if you're emancipated, a child can emancipate at 12. You're not grown. An 18-year-old,
At 16.
right. But that's because that's a choice. But would you say you now, the same 16-year-old mindset then?
If you talk mindset, no.
Well, that's what we're talking about, mindset, because he said grown.
Why is you not grown? No.
So,
You're not grown when you turn 21. Your mindset ain't grown.
so I had an elder tell me a long time ago, nobody's grown until you're 6 feet under. We're all growing because we learn every day, right? So acknowledge the fact that nobody's grown. Everybody's still on the mindset of growing, right?
So do you mature?
No, we just
What you just said.
Right. So I'm saying, like, as far as maturity,
well, because you wake up every day to learn.
Yeah.
So that's growing, right?
What you grown? Being dead? It's like what you just said.
No, I was saying because we can't grow.
Answer that question.
What makes you grown?
Yeah.
So go back to the first question.
No, answer that question.
What makes you grown?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to the last statement. Nothing until you're 6 feet under, and that's if you learned your lessons.
Learning. I ain't saying
Right,
learning.
but that's if you learned your lessons, right? So if we're talking about just a mindset of experience, when you realize, like I said to Ram, your time equates to your value, right? Y'all got another question before I go into this?
I think what you're saying about grown is when an individual understands his obligations and his responsibilities. It don't take for you to be 6 feet under to be able to master it. It takes consistency. You know what I'm saying?
So for me to say growing, I was saying it from a learning perspective. We all grow up. We get up every day till we learn something new. We're learning every day. Okay, prime example, perfect example, right? So would you say there's a difference between maturing and grown?
Because we accept our obligations and our responsibilities.
You think it'll be Kansas City?
Responsible for and to one another.
Right.
And it's obligated.
Come on now.
That's part of maturity being.
Right.
When you accept that responsibility, to step up and say, I accept it. But accepting it by speaking it, it's going to take more than speaking. You got to put some action with it.
Well, that's kind of like the word love, right? Love is an action, not in a word, right?
But it's more than verbally speaking.
Right, it's actually doing and accepting it.
It must produce action.
So that's accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that was kind of going into today's topic. I'm watching the clock here. Before I get into the topic, I'm asking you definitions. How do you define a distraction?
Hey, they better hurt. They gonna have to hurt Patrick on God.
I define a distraction as on
Because if
balance.
he,
Off balance?
Because
if he got one leg and
Jim
one arm,
Brown
they gonna win.
said that what is the fall and distraction? What is the fall of a black man? He said keeping
Hey, Rick.
distracted,
You
keeping
did the right
off balance,
thing.
Okay.
and then keeping
With that?
unfocused,
Got that
and he'll
25.
always
yes,
stay
sir.
focused.
Okay. So is a distraction
Hey,
a need?
You my man, that need on.
Hey,
And listen to you, bro.
Is a distraction a need?
right there.
Distraction is the need.
Is it a need?
Sometimes it's a learning process to be distracted.
Okay. So you desire to be distracted at some point in your life.
Yeah, because life
Alright,
is
like
a
watching
rehearsal.
the Eagles.
You are what you rehearse.
Okay.
What you're rehearsing, I'll show you where you're going.
Okay. So would you say, because here's today's topic, is love a distraction?
Love-
Yes. Yes.
He want to jump in on the line.
It's just different. It's different.
Wait, I was defining the word distraction first. Can you define the word distraction when you yell out yes? What is a distraction?
Did not,
I'll get back to you.
distraction is to knock you off what you're trying to succeed in life.
Okay. A distraction, he said, is something that you're
It's
trying.
like, I'm gonna get back to this. Just like you say love.
Right.
Like a lot of guys fall in love, they can't even go to work no more. They
Okay.
can't play basketball.
'Cause they got
can't go to school because they worry about that other person.
Okay.
Their mind is always on that other person, and they're doing what's matter in life.
Okay. So love seems like a distraction. Well, I'm saying that because once you realize, what are you really loving about the other person? Is it the energy? Is it what they do for you? Is it how they make you feel? What is distracting you, knowing that your partner ain't going nowhere? You're gonna see when you get home from work why you can't do the job.
Love brings about communication.
But love is more than just a distraction, right? Okay.
Distraction is a detour.
Right. Right.
What you believe in, you gotta stand on business on what you believe in. And if you stand on business what you believe in, then you still got to execute and what you believe in. Because if you come distract you, say, I can do this and do this and do this. But if you stand on business what you believe in,
So that goes back to me as a self-awareness coach. Most times I tell people, a lot of couples aren't ready to be in a relationship because,
you got 5 different types of love. That's why
well,
it speaks about love.
so Gary Chapman talks about those 5 and actually wrote a book on the 5 that we learned love on. So he talked about, what is it, time, touch, affirmation. Those are the 5 I realize as an urban love therapist that we should be giving ourselves every day. Not giving it to nobody else, not expecting somebody to give it to us. The 5 that I talk about, we grew up in the urban community under 5 gamuts of what we call love, right? And they're basically distractions, right? A lot of us were based off of the love of what our parents grew up to distract themselves with.
And that was a good thing because it taught us as a reflection on how to treat people and how to present ourselves.
The resiliency.
But what it did not do was did a good job in us teaching us to love ourselves.
Right. So even now, I still say what should be taught in the schools, if we send our children to school, is value.
Because at the end of the day, we'll find someone in our life based on how we were brought up,
Right.
taught to love,
Exactly.
and then when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to ourselves, we don't care nothing about ourselves.
Right.
I want to give you an example. It says that a black man works his whole life and never take a 2-week vacation. He spends his life surrounding himself around trying to take care of everything around him.
Right.
And when he died, he never took
the
a
time.
vacation to do anything for himself.
Okay.
So he ends up dying, never doing anything for himself because
Right.
the people around him had no value in
Okay.
him other than what he
could
be,
do, right.
Not what he could be. You don't need. At the end of the day, I heard an old man say, "I don't need what you have.
Right.
I need who you are."
Right.
And
But most
that's
people don't
what-
know who they are before they get to anything else.
We ain't tapped into who we
So,
are.
and that's why I had the retreat going on for, it's called a Human Experience. It's a black men only. But you have a lot of pushback because black men don't like taking breaks on saying, I got to take care of me. You know,
Well, that means taking care of their family and everybody around them.
well, that just goes back to what you're saying about that's what they can do for somebody else. So the reason why I initiated that retreat was because when I've been on retreats and I've seen retreats, the only species of humans that don't go to retreats are black men.
Well, they say we don't take a break.
But that's your choice.
But that's our choice.
That's your choice. So don't nobody want to hear the violin where you're like, I didn't take a break. That's on you. Everybody has a choice to take care of self first.
But it needs to be put out there so that people are able to understand that we spend our whole life working and preparing to take care of our family and never take time out for ourselves.
So would you say, because I've seen some men where they take their breaks daily, right? Whether they have families or not, they'll take their mini breaks. Or I used to call it the cigarette breaks. Whether they smoked or not, they'll take a break. A mother would take more of, let me take a weekend. I just need like a Friday night to Sunday and I'll come back. Because, you know, a child is a full-time job, right? That's a sacrifice on everything. Yet, when do you say enough is enough to say, I have to take a break? You have to get to that point to say, I'm worth just as much as anybody else in this household or in this job to take a break.
I was talking to a young lady today, and I was telling her about a kid. I said, one thing you'll master with your kids, you'll master that when they need something, they can come to you.
Right.
But when they need to learn responsibilities and all of that, they don't respect you in that area because you haven't enforced them. You just enforce to them that when they need, they can come.
So
if she needs them to clean up, to do something, then they can do it.
So there are various styles of parenting. That's one of the three topics I usually don't talk about: parenting, politics, and religion. I know for me, I've always taught my children self-sustainability. So if I'm not here, y'all know what to do, right? So even when my oldest, well, he's 29, when he was 8, they knew how to cook. So my youngest are in middle school, the twins, they know how to cook. They know how to clean, do laundry, all that, because it needed to be, I'm not giving you, these are not chores. These are responsibilities. So when you become an adult and you have your own place, you got to do it for yourself. You know, society says, oh, it's a chore. No, no, no. Oh, I had one time, one of them asked me, I thought it was a joke. She said, Mommy, can I get allowance? I said, you're allowed to be here. That's your allowance. Pick up your weight and do what you have to do. We all could do. And there are those who don't have arms or legs but still do.
One of the things that's very important to me, I understand what you're saying, you brought them up and stuff like that. But one of the great topic is in this modern day culture, are we still teaching our kids about being able to about charity, to give back.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I hear a lot of say, oh, I ain't doing nothing for nobody, I ain't gonna help nobody do that. Like snow and stuff came. I went out and I volunteered.
Right, we're a community, right.
But it's a lot of people say,
well, because the mindset is, if nobody did for you before, why would I do for somebody else?
but all their life, somebody did for them.
Right, but that's entitlement and ungratefulness. Right, that's ingratitude. I know a couple years, because we don't do Christmas, we will go to, what is it, Hosea Helps? And we do that. I'm like, I'm your gift anyway, every day of the year. I don't do the holidays. I am your holiday. I'm your special day. You came from me. So it's always imparting, everyone's mindset is based off of what they choose to grow into. I wasn't raised like that. Yeah, that's what I choose to bring up for my children. So, there's that. Yet the topic was, for love being a distraction, was to see that, would you allow yourself to use love as your kryptonite when it's not really a distraction? It's just an add-on to your life.
I think with love, you need three components. You need wisdom, knowledge, and master that. Be able to master those.
You're talking about love for yourself? Okay.
Even with your surroundings.
Okay.
Applying those three principles.
Right.
Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding.
So even before we get there, most people don't even understand wisdom, knowledge, understanding.
See what's around you.
Right.
Knowledge is to know how to operate.
No, I know all those. I guess I'm thinking of the concept of, let's go a little deeper. How do you encourage or enforce, not even enforce, that's such a strong word. How do you teach a principle for somebody who sees no value in principle? Because you got to start there before you get to wisdom and knowledge and understanding.
One of the things that is important is that we all have a digestive system.
Right.
And so what we do, sometimes we get offended or we look at them different because when we're sharing knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, sometimes the way that they respond,
They receive it.
many times that may not be the case.
Right.
We have a digestive system, no matter how they accept it,
Right.
they got to go somewhere and digest it.
Right.
And
So-
so I think that we have to keep dialogue.
So and that's why I keep coming to the barbershops every Saturday just to keep the dialogue moving, because when I first would go in different barbershops, the pushback was I'm always talking about relationships from a woman's perspective. I'm like, I'm a human first. We have to understand that we need each other. Let's have this conversation. Let's talk about self-awareness, because I'm all about each one, reach one, right? So it's, even with couples, most couples don't even know the language that each other speaks. So let's say your wife, and you're saying something like, man, I think I'm hungry today. A woman should know, okay, maybe he wants to cook some food for him. Opposed to you saying, babe, do you mind cooking some X, Y, and Z? Then she could receive it a little bit different, opposed to you throwing out there, man, I'm hungry today. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's having to understand the two languages before accepting it and calling it love.
But we have to understand the culture move that we had today. And you have to choose wisely who you choose to have as a mate.
All right, that's all another topic. We ain't got time.
I'm saying you got to be able to do that, because now the culture that's moving now is based around money. Based on if you want me to do this, then this is what I want.
Well, this is why I say 85% of the population is superficial, right? And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it says it exactly. 85% of the human race thinks they're self-aware, but only 15% are. If you're trending, then you're not aware. That's it. It's just what it is. So if you feel that the money is what's going to drive you to love, you're about to jump off the bridge now, because you're done. So it's the mindset of having to understand, what is the longevity and the investment of my future?
And this is what I say. This is what I say right now. I'm single. This is what I say to young men and young women. Take the time out to get to know yourself.
Right.
And to get to know the mate that you're involved with. But I tell them this. I tell them this before I go. I said I don't date. I just interview.
And we're going to end it there, people.
I don't date.